Good evening. We'll call this meeting of Council to order for February 27th, 2012. I'll ask Council to consider the recommendation that the regular meeting be suspended and that the Committee of the Whole meeting be convened. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Kenny. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That's passed. We'll move on to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, February 27th, 2012. I'll ask Council to consider the adoption of the agenda, and the recommendation is that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting for February 27th, 2012 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Guerin. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. We've got three presenters tonight under petitions and delegations, and with the indulgence of everyone here, I'll ask Mr. Dave Shannon to go first. He's only with us this evening, and the highway conditions aren't improving and haven't improved in the last couple of hours. So Mr. Shannon, if you'd like to come forward, please. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Please make yourself comfortable there. Mr. Shannon, none of us here know you, and I just met you about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. Would you like to, before you start, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here this evening?
Yes, I'm from Terrace, retired from Alcan. We own a small house here in Prince Rupert and pay taxes as well, so I'm a resident of both communities, actually.
What's your favorite community?
We love to come here. We really do. We really love this place. My wife's with me at the moment. I'm a retired engineer from Alcan, and I worked there for 32 years. I'm an active intervener in the Enbridge JRP process. So that's my background in a nutshell. I'm an engineer. Well, yeah. I'm an engineer that retired from Alcan.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Mayor and Council and Honorable Mayor, Council, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I've got a series of about 13 slides. I'm going to try to do them within the 10-minute allotted period. I hope I don't go over that, but I'll give it my best shot. Because of the 13, I might have to rush through them, so I hope I do justice to them. Would anybody mind if I use a laser pointer? I hope I don't burn anyone's eyes out. Let's see. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so start. Where are we? Slideshow. From the beginning. Before I start, I've done a lot of study of the Enbridge application, looking at all of the information that they've submitted so far. It's a burgeoning file, and I have it all on a flash drive, believe it or not. It will fill many library shelves with papers, but I've got it on one little flash drive. I've taken issue with a few of the simplifications that Enbridge would like the public to believe about the ease of transporting oil on the North Coast as compared to other world ports. So what I've done is I've examined some of the claims in one of the reports from DNV, which is Det Norsk Veritas. They're a firm that does consulting for firms in the oil business and making cases for the transportation. So the title of my presentation is World Crude Oil Ports with VLCC Traffic Routes compared to Enbridge Northern Gateway proposal for Kitimat. The first slide is a rather busy one. I'm sorry about that, but it's a table taken out of the DNV report. The source of it is at the bottom of the table. It's the report on maneuvering study for escort tankers to and from Kitimat. So what I've done is I've highlighted everything in the table regarding terminal, where the terminals are that DNV says very large crude carriers are in the business. So anything on the table that's highlighted is in red is 300,000 ton deadweight or more. So the column on the far right indicates the deadweight tons. The column on the far left is the port. So we have Valdez, Alaska, Milford Haven, UK, Mongstad in Norway, Hammerfest in Norway, Stura in Norway, Sullom Voe on the Shetland Island, and Brofjorden in Sweden. And the other three columns indicate tug, steering power, bollard pull, and tug name. I won't go into too many details about that, but we'll just jump on to the next slide.
What was the ratio between the bollard pull and the
Let him finish, please. Quiet. Let
Well,
him finish.
no,
It's
that's
his
not-
presentation.
that's
Please
not-
go ahead, Mr. Shedd.
It's not pertinent to this discussion, but it could be a point for raising for later on, perhaps. Okay. We have Milford Haven in the UK first. It's the first. I chose it to represent first on the series of slides. What you can see there is the tanker terminal right there, Milford Haven, and the white line is the tanker route until the open sea. Milford Haven is in the UK on the eastern side of Great Britain. The route to the sea is 15 miles, straight line pretty much. The next slide indicates both Mongstad, Norway, and Stura, Norway. They were both on the table as well. They're ports that are 20 miles from the open ocean, and there's a little bit of a bend in the one from Stura, but apart from that, it's not a very long trip. Hammerfest in Norway, about 30 miles. This is a northern Norway port. It's I think it's above the Arctic Circle or close to it anyways. But the point is I'm at the longest trip so far, and it's 30 miles. Brofjorden, Sweden is 20 miles from the sea. You see the terminal with the little yellow sticky, and a straight line from there to the sea. Sullom Voe in the Shetlands is a route approximately 20 miles long. The longest one so far is Valdez, Alaska. That was the first name in the table, and it's a hockey stick shape. The Exxon Valdez ran into Bligh Reef just about there in 1989, I think. So, anyways, the distance to the sea is 90 miles, and it's a fair bit of open water before they get there. This is Kitimat on the same scale. I should have mentioned this at the first. Every one of these slides is in a 50-mile scale from there to there. So they're all identical scales so far. And what we have is Kitimat right there. That's the pipeline route coming to it. That yellow line doesn't show up if anybody has a black and white copy. It's a yellow line on color. But the northern route is the one that spears off this way. The southern route is the one that goes that way. And the Queen of the North's location is right about there. The reason I want to just spend a bit of time on this one is it should be of considerable interest to anybody living in Prince Rupert. This presentation is for the Rupert crowd, so I thought I'd bring forth a few details. The first one is that the Triple Island is the normal boarding and deboarding, or barking, debarking, or however you say that, location for the pilots. So a pilot will join the trip of an inbound tanker and take it all the way to Kitimat. On the outbound trip, if he's taking the northern route, he'll get off there as well. If anybody here is old enough to remember Christmas Day in 1973, there was an ore carrier called the Lee Wang Zin. It had just come out of Tasu with a load of iron ore pellets. And it was just dropped the pilot at Triple Island. Shortly after that, it ran into the Celestial Reef, right about there. It immediately sank, taking every sailor with it. So there were 30 deaths on board, which is a very tragic situation. But the fuel oil spilled, painting the shores of Alaska all the way north. The storm was tremendous, and that's one of the reasons that the oil spill happened. Probably one of the reasons that the ore carrier ran aground as well. It's a very tragic circumstance. But it's very much in the neighborhood of where where any oil tankers in the projected project would be going. The reason I bring up the Strait of Magellan is that, to my mind, it's the only tanker route in the world that I could find that's anywhere near as difficult as the Kitimat one. Again, this is a 50-mile scale. So we have this is, okay, anybody who's not familiar with Strait of Magellan, it's at the southernmost tip of South America. South America. It's this route right here. It starts at the Atlantic. It travels through this waterway and ends through there at the Pacific. If you go around the Horn, it's an extremely rough trip, so some ships will take the easier way out. The point from this slide is that there were 4 VLCCs that tried this in the early 70s. The 4th one ran aground, and it was called the Matula. The cause of the grounding was a pilot error. The pilot decided not to wait until daylight to take the trip. He started into it at night. They ran aground and they had an enormous oil spill, 54,000 tons. It painted the shores because there wasn't enough cleanup availability in a very isolated location. In that sense, it has some similarities to the difficulty in getting to an oil spill in the northern reaches of the proposed Enbridge northern route. So shortly after this, they said no to VLCC tankers through this area. 350 miles. It's bigger than the Douglas Channel it's bigger than the northern Gateway route by about 100 miles, but it's got a lot of the same features. Let's go back to 3 of the ports I mentioned earlier. This is on a scale of 100 miles. One of the ports I mentioned was Mongstad, another one was Stura, and the third one was Sullom Voe. You've seen those 3 slides in a 50-mile scale. This one is at a 100-mile scale, so it's looking further back than the other 3 ports. The Brayer is the name of a tanker that left Mongstad en route to Canada with a shipment of Garfolk's oil, I think, from Norway. It ran into extremely severe weather. The weather was so severe that the fuel lines took on seawater and went to the bottom of the fuel tanks. So this poor tanker was crippled because it was sucking seawater into the engines. It's a combination. They attribute the sinking to a cause of this. They attribute the sinking to a combination of human error with severe weather. Anyways, the ship was 240 miles from Mongstad when it ran aground, and it sank. The spill was I think the 3rd largest in history, 85,000 tons. And the interesting feature about the sinking was it was 3 hours from tugboat assistance, but it wasn't enough time to give it the hand it needed. And to me, that's the similarity is, man, that could be the Queen Charlotte Islands. I'm playing with distances here, but there's a lot of open ocean, and it's really hard to imagine hitting a big rock like that, but it happened. This is a really busy slide. I wanted to bring it up anyways. There's a lot of ways a tanker can run into grief, and one of them is a loss of power or a loss of steering. This paragraph here is extracted from a history of tug escort guideline regulation development for the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach Harbor. It's found in a June 30th, 2007 link, which is shown right here. They found 1 in 100 commercial vessels which sustained some kind of steering or propulsion failure during the inbound or outbound transit. So if you apply that rate to the LNG and Enbridge Northern Gateway traffic proposed for the Kitimat Harbor, we could expect a steering or power failure as often as 3 times a year. And that would relate to tugboats as well. So the tugs that are supposed to be giving these tankers assistance could also have these problems. We're often told by the company, by Enbridge, the proponent, that we shouldn't be too worried because we'll be using double hulls, all of whom will be less than 20 years old. What I've done here is I've put together a table which shows The shaded portion is the first decade of the 21st century. And what I've identified is whether the hull on these tankers was, what kind of hull was it? Double what? It was a double hull, it was a double bottom, it was a double hull. So each of these dark shaded areas indicates this ship had a double hull. The name of the ship is this fourth column from the left. The age of the ship, when it had the incident, is in the third column from the left, and the only one that's over 20 years is the second one. So it's a little bit older than the rest, but the rest of them are all less than 20 years old. The deadweight tons, that's what they're. Some of them are small tankers. There's one VLCC in there. It's the front Vanguard. It ran into a grounding. There was another ship involved, so there's another column here that indicates was there another ship or was it a grounding or other circumstance. But the point I'm trying to make is there's some fairly large spills here from double hulls. They're supposed to be, supposed to make you feel warm and fuzzy because we've got them. But the average spill was 4 million liters. That's 1 million gallons roughly. Roughly 25,000 barrels of oil is the average of that shaded column. And the interesting thing to note that is that at least two of them had a pilot on board at the time. So this pilot was assisting in the traverse of where this tanker was going, and two of them had pilots on board. So that's the end of my presentation, the main body, and I'm a little concerned that one of the things that bothers me is Transport Canada has given the go-ahead to the Turnpole report just recently, and I am a little worried that DNV has taken a lot of shortcuts with the information they've presented, and I don't think enough study has gone into it. The final slide, let's see if I can get to it. Is the IT guy here?
Yes, he is. He's coming forward.
Okay. How do I get to that other one? Thank you. Thanks. So my final slide is you've seen the Google Earth portrayal of what the Kitimat route really looks like. This is a picture that I've seen on CTV and in the Calgary Sun on occasion, and it represents a vast oversimplification of the route from Kitimat to the open sea. And if this is what the average Canadian is seeing, they must be asking what's wrong with this project. Why are some of us concerned about it? This is very misleading, and it bothers me that this information is out there. One of the purposes for my getting together with you today is to show you what the routes of the world really are like, how they relate to Kitimat's route, and what the public is being told from sources that shouldn't be saying these things. So that's, in a nutshell, that's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Ashley.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'm not sure if you would know the answer to this. I just found it interesting that, like on the last slide, not this one, but the last one of your other presentation, that so many of the vessels didn't have a pilot on board, and I'm just wondering, is that a standard thing that pilots aren't on board, or if you know that?
It could be they were in the open ocean. A pilot is usually on board to assist a tanker get through an area that isn't an easy route to take. So I can't say for sure whether some of those could have had a pilot but didn't. But as far as I'm aware, I know of only two that had them on. So you'd have to look at the latitude and longitude to know, and they were on the chart, I think, as well. You'd have to know if this was a confined channel or someplace that needed guidance other than the tanker chief. Okay.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Thorkelson.
A couple of years ago, there was a tanker that ran aground in Douglas Channel. It had a pilot on board. Is that correct?
You're referring to the Petersfield. That was a bulk carrier, not a tanker. Some people make that. Yeah, even the CTV specials showing showing tankers in the Douglas Channel are actually looking at bulk carriers unloading alumina and still calling them tankers. The Petersfield was a freighter, freight carrier, bulker, I guess. It snubbed its nose with a pilot on board. There were no tugboats assisting it, but it experienced a complete gyroscopic failure and smashed into, I forget the name of the area. But yes, there was a pilot on board.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't an oil tanker, but it's a very big ship, not as large as the oil tankers that are going to be coming through there.
Probably about a third as large or smaller.
Mr. Shannon, you referenced the Lee Wang's Inn. Some of us remember it. Councillor Thorkelson may have been too young, along with the others here, but certainly Councillor Kenny, Prince Rupert's newest grandfather, would remember. I should tell you, sir, that I am on public record as the mayor of the city of Prince Rupert as stating that if there are tankers coming out of Douglas Channel, that they sail either due west or south by southwest and drop their pilot off via helicopter and stay right away from Triple Island. We are very concerned about commodities being carried, and the quickest route westward is that route as opposed to coming north and utilizing Triple Island. There's nothing further. Well, thank you again for your presentation and for coming down here. I'm happy to hear that Prince Rupert's one of your favorite communities.
It very much is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Next is a presentation from the Prince Rupert Food for Thought regarding food in Prince Rupert. I'd ask those representatives to come forward, please. Good evening. Would you make yourselves comfortable there, please? For the record, could you please state your names, or Mrs. Hermanson, would you like to introduce everybody?
Good evening.
Certainly, you could pull that mic down towards you. That's so that people at home that are watching on TV can also, they can see you, but they'll be able to hear you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Would you like to turn it on again?
There. Good evening. I have Irvin Nelson from the Senior Center with us this evening, Mrs. Louisa Sanchez from the Prince Rupert Community Enrichment Society, our wonderful manager from Overweighty Dan, Erica Collison from the Salvation Army, and I'm with the Cane Anti-Poverty Society.
Thank you. Good evening. Would you please proceed? If you need a glass of water, I detected a slight cough there. Please help yourself.
It's fine, thank you. I'm wondering if maybe we could get our manager from Overweighty to let everybody know what Overweighty has been doing, and then we can just move on down the line.
Certainly. Erica, if you'd like to drag that mic over, everybody could stay in their chairs. Good
Hi,
evening.
everybody. Our part is very small in the workload of it, but hopefully it helps in the long run. What we're doing right now is every day we have been known in grocery stores across the world to throw out thousands and thousands of pounds of food daily in stores, and instead of doing that with the large need for food in this community, we're making salvage of anything that's just bruised but not perfect for sale. Like every day we take off any apples that are slightly bruised or whatnot, because human routine is to pick the best looking one, and they're not going to sell anyhow. So now instead of putting them into landfills across the community, we're simply saving them and giving them to this food share group to put into the hands of the people that really need the food. So that goes across. Mainly it's in our produce department and our bakery departments at this point, and we're going to expand it more into our meats and our dairy and deli as well going forward here. So it should save quite a lot of waste. I mean, in our Terrace store, the Terrace Save-On, in the last 4 years has donated 400,000 pounds of food that is good enough to go back into people's mouths instead of the landfills. So hopefully we are able to even come up with half that number would be a great win for this community.
Thank you very much.
From the Salvation Army part of it, just like to express the need for the food share program. On average, from the food bank, we serve about 150 to 200 families per month. And for the month of February, we had 18 new families. And same with January, it was about 15 new families. And for the soup kitchen, we serve on average, on a slow day, you're looking at about 120 people. On a busy day, a good 200 people. And yeah.
Thank you.
Those are just numbers. Thank you.
Just to give you a bit of a backgrounder on this, in 1989, the Gloucester Emergency Food Cupboard was established in Ottawa, and they are going strong even now. In 1997, the Attorney General of BC, Charles Desange, brought in the Food Donor Encouragement Act so that businesses and others could donate to the food share program without the worry of being held liable for their donation of perishable foods. So we do have a document here in BC that does eliminate the worry for people that want to donate perishable foods. In 2007, Terrace began the food share program through the Calum Community Schools Society. And as Dan said, they have handed out in the neighborhood of over 400,000 pounds of food in the Terrace area. In 2011, Prince Rupert had a lovely lady from Terrace come down to speak to a group of community members to inform us of what Terrace was doing, because some of us didn't know. We chose to follow Terrace and strive to provide the food share program here in Prince Rupert, and in February we began on a small scale the food share program here in Prince Rupert. To date, because we've been going for just the month of February, we believe that we have offered 2,600 pounds of food to approximately 324 people. And we are operating 7 days a week. We are located in the Cain Anti-Poverty Facility on McKay Street. And we have Louisa and Irvin, who are our picker-uppers and baggers and sorters and hander-outers. And I'll let them speak.
Thank you. I should tell you that Mrs. Sanchez is well known to us here and acknowledged for her efforts. And I know a lot of you, and I want to say this right now, that the community appreciates the fact that people volunteer and try to make a difference, which is what you're doing. Mrs. Sanchez, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. What you've heard, it is good news that we are doing something that I believe will serve the community as a whole. At this time, and I do hope that people are not going to take this in a negative way. However, I think for right now, it's a little premature in terms of what we're doing, making this presentation. And the reason I'm saying that is because we do not have all the people, all the different organizations involved. We have people that from the Nishka Hall, Fairview, they're not there, Friendship House, and North Coast Transition House Society. What I've been doing for the past week, I've been trying to get in touch with the other people, and what I do, I got 2 people to help me, 2 committed Aboriginal people who I believe, are consistent and are willing to help. So they've been coming with me. We go and we collect the food, and they're shared and put into bags, and we take it down to caps. And from there, when the people come in, they can, take a bag and go from there. What's left, what I do, I take it to either the Salvation Army, or we take it to the Mission of the Good Shepherd. Again, that's another agency that's not here tonight. And because we have, the logistics, we really have to look at what we're doing before we come and get your endorsement. And so, for me, I would really like to see a postponement of this presentation, because there's still some things that need to be, I need the committee as a whole to come and make this presentation, and we still don't have everything, we don't have our ducks in a row, as far as I see it. And it's not that it's not a good food for thought. I really like what's happening from what I see. People really enjoy coming to those things, because I see there are people in the area, but I would like to see the community where we have presentation, having, let's say if we have something at CAPS, then we could have something else at Salvation Army and at the other areas, because we need to serve the whole community, not just one area. And and that's why I'm asking that we postpone or table this for a later date when we have all our ducks in a row. It is things that are going okay, but I'd rather see something that we have, because right now we have just myself and Irvin, and I'd like to see people working as a team. And whenever we go anywhere, for me, especially for a non-profit organization, I like to see we have at least 2 or 3 people there. For that, I believe that my goal is always for social responsibility, accountability, and that's why I'm asking to have at least 2 or 3 people when we're working together to make sure everything is going in the right direction.
Certainly. Thank you for your comments. We'll take this presentation as information only at this time. And what you've talked about, of course, concerns credibility within the community. And if you're going to do something, you want to do it to the best of your ability. And certainly that is understood.
That's my
Thank you.
We'll reach this far. I think you set it up for both of us anyway.
If there's nothing further, then you're certainly welcome to come back. As was stated, this is a little premature, but you're welcome to come back again and talk to the council.
Thank you very much.
Yes?
Oh. This is going on right now, though. The food is being given out. Well, I think it's good that you've come to let council know and let people know in Prince Rupert that the services is already started, and that there may be a few hitches, but if people can go to the office, it's on where is the CAP office? McKay Street and McKay
Street, 569 McKay Street, daily, 7 days a week. We're handing the food out between approximately 11:30 and 12 noon each day.
That's between 11:30 and 12:30 each day? 11:30 and 12 each day, the food's being handed out. And it's mostly produce, I understand, right now, and baking goods?
No baking goods, just fruit and vegetables.
No ice cream?
No.
Well, I'd like to just
please go ahead.
And I'd like to say this is an excellent project, and I'm glad it's going, even though it might not have reached the it might not have spread all the way through Rupert like it hopefully. Every program has a starting time, right? And so I'm glad that we came here tonight, and because this is the best way, I think, to let people know in the community. It attracts more I think it attracts more members. It lets people know, and certainly people are hurting right now, and they need to come in and know that they can pick up some food at the CAPS office on McKay Street. Thank you very much for coming.
Councillor Carlick-Pearson, you have a question?
I think it's a wonderful initiative, and you know, I think it's good that the community knows that it's not only a seasonal issue for everyone, that you know, during Christmas holidays we talk about hunger and trying to help out, and I think it's great that it's ongoing. And I was just wondering, I had a question. So is it only Overweighty that provides this generous service, or have we talked to Maverick and Safeway and everyone else?
I think at this stage it's on the Overweighty, and that is why I'm asking that we wait until later when we could get more people involved. Things are going well, but we need to get more people involved, and until that time we will come back and make a presentation and ask for your endorsement.
Certainly. Councillor Anna Ashley.
Thank you for your presentation. It's not so much a question, it's more of just a looking forward piece. So when all of the situation is to the point where you feel that you can come back to council, if there's more than an endorsement that you're looking for, it would be helpful to us to know what those requests are so that we have time to think about it and see how that would work out. So just a note.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Councillor Rice.
I guess I was just looking for, I have two questions of clarification. So, Dan, you're from Overweighty here in Prince Rupert, is that correct? And this proposal, or this is basically modeled off the food share program in Terrace. And so if your ducks were more in a row, what would you be asking for from the City of Prince Rupert, or do you know that at this point? Is there something as a council that we would help do besides an endorsement, but to just sort of mobilize this? Or do we know at this point?
Do you have any ideas on that?
Oh.
The letter that we did receive did not specifically outline a request.
There was not an ask. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
This evening was to be more of an information session to let you people know that this is underway, that we are a fledgling group, that we are just getting our ducks in a row, and that Overweighty has been kind enough to jump on board, and that we will be approaching Maverick and Safeway. But I must say that Safeway has been approached in Terrace right up to the international offices, and it has been no by Safeway. So we're hoping that if we can advertise the fact that Overweighty has jumped on board so graciously here in Prince Rupert, that maybe Safeway will think twice about it here in Prince Rupert.
Please go ahead.
Does this program work with just grocery stores, or is there like a restaurant? Is there other, or is there sort of health bylaw or health laws that can you receive food from restaurants that's sort of going to waste, or is that illegal? I'm looking for clarification on that.
I'd like to answer that.
Go ahead.
I'd like your chair. Now, thank you very much. The law, as Colleen has said, the law was passed specifically so I could give you food of any kind at any time, and unless I knew specifically that it was contaminated, I am safe from prosecution. That is the law. Very concise, very simple, and very helpful.
Councillor Kinney.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's a great idea and a wonderful thing you're doing. And when you are ready to come back as a really organized group, and if we can be of any help, I know we will. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Next, we have a presentation from the Prince Rupert Environmental Society. Is the representative present? Good evening. Would you make yourselves comfortable there, please? Your names for the record, please.
Winat Kitsis Waltsni Shaganat, also known as Gerald Stewart, residing in Prince Rupert.
Ian Dobson.
Pat Murray.
Good evening. Please put your microphone on so that people at home can hear you.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for having us. We would like to recognize and acknowledge that we were on Tsimshian land. Here's our introductions. We're here representing the Prince Rupert Environmental Society. The reason we're here is to ask our council to pass a resolution opposing Enbridge's Northern Gateway pipeline. There's a copy here of a resolution recently passed by the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District, which may act as a guideline. Shall I distribute this?
Read it out, please.
Oh, okay. Well, Pat was going to do the presentation. Pat, would you?
Read this to start. The Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District resolution reads as follows. Whereas the Enbridge Northern Gateway project will result in increased crude oil traffic, tanker traffic, and risk of accidental oil spills in northern coastal waters in British Columbia, and whereas a crude oil spill will have devastating and long-lasting effects on the Pacific North Coast area that is recognized for its unique and diverse ocean ecosystems, which provide critical marine habitat and marine resources that sustain the social, cultural, environmental, and economic health of coastal communities, including First Nations communities. Therefore, be it resolved that the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District be opposed to any expansion of bulk crude oil tanker traffic as well as bitumen export in Dixon Entrance, Hecate Strait, and Queen Charlotte Sound in British Columbia. And be it further resolved that the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District petition the federal government to establish a legislated ban on bulk crude oil tanker traffic and bitumen export through Dixon Entrance, Hecate Strait, and Queen Charlotte Sound in British Columbia. Council.
Certainly, you can distribute them if you like, but you could continue with your presentation also.
Okay.
Shall I distribute one, Pat?
Certainly, if you'd like.
Okay. The Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District's wording in the resolution focused on the ocean, knowing that without tankers there can be no pipeline. We agree with this, but we also stand with and commend the communities up country that are fighting this lunacy with their focus on the inland waterways. It is right and proper for this council to express our opposition to supertankers. Not only did the Regional District and Terrace City Council pass motions to this effect, but the Union of BC Municipalities passed 2 motions referencing Enbridge Northern Gateway's project. One was that the UBCM be opposed to any expansion of bulk crude oil tankers, and the other was that the Union of BC Municipalities oppose tar sands oil being shipped in pipelines across northern BC for loading onto crude oil tankers. We urge Council not to wait until after the National Energy Board has ruled. It could be taken as an acceptance of that body as the final judge in the decision to allow or ban supertankers, and that is not the National Energy Board's role. The National Energy Board is only mandated to decide if the project is legal, but that isn't the main issue. What we must judge is, are the benefits worth the risk? And so far, Canada has maintained a supertanker moratorium here because of our values, something the National Energy Board can't address, but City Council can. The amount of risk which one accepts is relative to the value one places on what is being risked. And in Prince Rupert, our lives are inextricably linked to the ocean and its resources. Another reason Council's stance is important, regardless of the National Energy Board, is that we in Prince Rupert and our Council understand better than most people across Canada that the First Nations in this region say no, that there is a cultural resurgence on the North Coast, and the lack of treaties is a reality. The First Nations have a right to say no on issues critical to them, and there is a broad respect of this position across the region and across cultures. The lone dissenting vote at the regional district claimed that if we keep pushing people away, our towns will die. And this has no merit. On land, the economic end result would be the employment equivalent of a mid-sized Canadian Tire in Kitimat. And the marine end result would be frightening-sized volumes of oil traveling through some extraordinarily treacherous waters, threatening our seafood resources, which are continually increasing in value. So it's a lose-lose scenario. Spills are inevitable. Enbridge's record on dealing with their pipeline spills is abysmal. They absolve themselves of all responsibility for tanker safety. I quote a question asked of Enbridge by Gary Reese, the chief of Lac Whillam. How are you going to compensate my people if there is ever an oil spill? Well, they couldn't answer that. In conclusion, I would like to invite Council to an event tomorrow night where citizens are gathering together to share information about this project and figure out how we can work together. That is Tuesday night, tomorrow at 7 p.m. at Fisherman's Hall. And also for more info, please check our website at Save Our Skeena Salmon. We recognize that your votes on the Regional District Board helped to pass their resolution, and we thank you. And now that Prince Rupert is being mentioned more and more as a potential oil supertanker port, we look forward to you making it clear to Enbridge that they are not welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of council to the presenters? Councillor Thorkelson.
So your ask is today that we pass a motion similar to that one that is passed by the regional district?
Correct, and of course with the wording that you choose yourself.
Are there any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next part of the Committee of the Whole meeting, which is a question period from the public. If there's anyone who has questions about the city's operations, they're certainly welcome to come forward at this time and ask their questions. I'll ask Council to adjourn this Committee of the Whole meeting so that we can reconvene back to a regular meeting of Council. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. This Committee of the Whole meeting is adjourned. We'll now move back to the regular meeting of Council for Monday, February 27th, and the agenda. I'll ask Council to consider the adoption of the agenda. There is a recommendation that the agenda for the regular Council meeting of February 27th, 2012 be adopted as circulated. There is one additional item from the Prince Rupert Novice Hockey Tournament. There's a request concerning their tournament on March 9th to 11th, 2012. I'll ask the Council members add that to the agenda. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Kenny, that the agenda be adopted as circulated, including the additional item from the Prince Rupert Minor Hockey Association regarding their Prince Rupert Novice Tournament, March 9th to 11th, 2012. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? The question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That's adopted. Next, I'll ask Council's consideration for the adoption of the minutes of the special council meeting of February 13th, 2012. Recommendation is they be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Guerin. Are there any omissions or errors? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next for consideration are minutes of the regular council meeting of February 13th, 2012, with the recommendation that they also be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Guerin. Are there any errors or omissions? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are also adopted. Moving on to reports and recommendations. There's a report from the City Manager, and this concerns the Coast Ferry Act review. There's a recommendation that Council write to BC Ferries registering concern regarding the recommendation to allow local governments to pay for enhanced ferry service. Mr. Howie, would you please outline the text of the report?
Thank you, Your Worship. As Council will recall, last fall, Gord McAtee, the BC Ferry Commissioner, did a tour of the province. His mandate was to report back to the province and to BC Ferries on policy issues around BC Ferries, on service delivery issues, rates. It was a fairly wide-ranging mandate on which he was to report. He did file his report on January the 24th, and I've tried to limit my report to items that I think may directly influence the city rather than comment on the many recommendations. The council position here and in other municipalities was basically that the BC ferry system should be treated as an extension of the BC highway system, and that it should be viewed in that manner rather than as a private enterprise concern. And that really could be reflected in the need for the private BC Ferry Corporation to raise rates in order to maintain its financial stability, to look at changing or reducing, or in cases expanding, routes to make itself more economically viable. However, the position that, as I say, many municipalities has taken is that it should be considered as part of the highway system, and it should be operated as a public good rather than as necessarily as a private corporation. There was one recommendation that both Mr. Wishart from Prince Rupert Tourism and myself felt was had the potential of impacting and actually leading to competition among municipalities for ferry service, and that was a recommendation that local governments be able to participate in funding BC ferry operations if the community was interested in enhancing those services. And so if you go back to the original premise that it should be part of the highway system, we don't really participate in the maintenance and operation of the highways other than occasionally to share in costs along with developers in developing intersection lights in particular. But that usually again is a situation where there may be a change in traffic patterns because of a new subdivision, and you usually try to have the developers involved in those costs rather than the city directly. So the basic recommendation here is and it should be to both the minister responsible and to BC Ferries, that we have concerns around the question of allowing municipalities to participate directly in the operating costs of BC Ferries.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make that motion that Council write to BC Ferries registering concerns regarding the recommendation to allow local governments to pay for the enhanced ferry service.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Rice. Is there any discussion? Councillor Ashley.
I'm in favor of the motion. I'm wondering if there's any point to adding to forwarding this to other municipalities and local governments that are also involved in this. I'm thinking like the regional district and other areas that have on Haida Gwaii that might be interested in knowing what we're doing.
Certainly, you could ask that it be forwarded to the Coastal Community Network, and they would distribute it to the coastal communities up and down the coast.
Could I offer that as a friendly amendment? Or
Certainly, if it's okay with the mover and seconder. Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, no difficulty with that, but could you also add as a friendly amendment that it go to the minister responsible?
I'll add that as a friendly amendment as well.
There you go. Is there any further discussion on the matter? It's pretty good for a landlubber, Councillor Ashley. There's no further discussion. I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is passed. Yes, certainly. Go ahead. Councillor Thorkelson or Councillor Ashley?
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. I was just wondering, on what basis did they, besides needing more money, on what basis did they try to show it would be to municipalities' advantage of having whatever would be called enhanced ferry services? I would just, without reading the long report, I was sort of wondering here, besides blackmail, what was the other, maybe you didn't use that, Mr. Howie, but apparently it occurred to me that they may say that if you want to have, if you want to have services more than once a week, cough up, right? And so I was wondering what exactly were we supposed to be buying with the our contribution?
Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, there wasn't a whole lot of pros around that recommendation, but it was my understanding that it was if you wanted to have a special an increased sailing into your community and it could fit, that you might contribute towards the cost of that operation. But again, it could be as services may be reduced in some areas. I didn't see it not saying that the municipality couldn't help to support and maintain that service, but the basic language was around enhanced service.
Councillor Ashley.
The question that I had, and it may be too early because this is obviously a review, but I'm just wondering if we could kind of keep it in the back of our heads, or maybe it isn't too early, in terms of whether or not this is something that would be appropriate for a resolution. Maybe not to NCLGA, but certainly to UBCM, should the review endorse despite our letter, but it might be too early for that, so I'm looking for input from staff on that. It's just a thought.
So you could check on the status of the matter in the month of July, prepare a resolution in August, and send it straight away to the UBCM for the latter part of September. Mr. Howie, what's the deadline for the UBCM normally?
It's usually a little earlier than that, Your Worship, but we could bring something back if things develop in May. The other thing I just wanted to mention is we'll in the letter we'll reinforce the basic principles of the city's position because they lead directly to the recommendation.
Is there any discussion with regard to this matter? Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we should include it. I guess it might be too late for NCLGA, but whatever happens in Prince Rupert affects communities all the way up the line. So
certainly. Councillor Thorkelson.
It's not too late for we're just doing the rest of the resolutions tonight. I think it is a good idea, Your Worship, to consider putting in one tonight because it was really the Inland Coalition that really defeated that last, the Highway 16 Coalition or whatever we called it, that defeated that last charge by the ferries. I have a question, Your Worship. Who is? I've just forgotten. Who replaced Councillor Gordon Payne, ex-Councillor Gordon Payne? Okay, I just was wondering on the ferry file. Okay, so yeah, I mean I think that's we should just maybe.
Would you like to craft a resolution?
I think Mr. Howie has got the idea of what we need to say.
Councillor Ashley.
I do have some wording that staff could probably wordsmith towards that end. I thought it might be an idea, but I don't know if people want me to read it now or if it's just better for me to forward it to staff and let them work with it.
Mr. Howie.
We've got the other resolutions. Perhaps at that time we could get the gist of it, and then we'll flesh it out.
Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That passes. Next is the report from the corporate administrator. This is regarding the North Central Local Government Association 2012 convention. There's a recommendation that council approve or amend and then approve the following draft resolutions to be submitted to the...
Your Worship, first we have the report from Mr. Roden on the public meeting process for the public safety building.
My apologies. Yes, there is a report from the Chief Financial Officer. This concerns the Fire Hall RCM Police Building Project Process Proposed Meeting Format. It comes with a recommendation that Council receive this report for information purposes. Mr. Roden, would you please outline the text of your report?
Certainly, Your Worship. The report, as you say, is just for information purposes. It was written to clarify how the meetings would occur, and also there was a number of questions about the cost of providing phone-in telephones and the ability to for people that ask questions. We've researched the matter. It's not going to cost very much. Senior staff will be taking the phones. It's not going to be Jerry Springer. People are not going to be able to phone in live. People will be able to make phone calls, and their phone calls will be taken. The questions will be written down, and then at an appropriate time in the meeting, the questions will be read out and answered by staff. The report goes into some detail on how questions will be handled, and essentially it will be a standard committee of the whole, and the council members will be able to first ask questions of the people making presentations, and then it will be opened up to members of the public who are actually down here. After that, we will deal with any questions that came in on the phone or by email. And at the end of the meeting, the mayor will canvass the council and the members of the public if they have any more questions, and if there's no more questions, the meeting will be adjourned for the night. So we hopefully fairly straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the work that's gone into this. Are there any questions from members of council? Mr. Roden. Councillor Thorkelson.
I just have one. At the last meeting, I was concerned that we add. I didn't think it had to be a separate agenda question, but that we add a description of the where the fire hall and RCMP or safety building came in line of priority with the other infrastructure issues that we have, so that we know why we're concentrating on that instead of concentrating on fixing Woodward Dam. Or
that could
like
be the subject of tomorrow's strategic planning meeting for the new council. Mr. Roden, do you have a comment, or Mr. Howie?
Certainly, Your Worship. For the first meeting, we've arranged that Mr. Bill Horn, General Manager of Public Works, is going to speak for about 5 to 10 minutes just on the general state of our infrastructure, so that the community has a really good opportunity to understand where we are and what needs to be done and what can be expected to occur over the next 15 to 20 years. And I'll just put a plug in for our website. There's actually 3 reports on infrastructure that are on our website right now that have been presented to council over the years, and they make they're good foundational reading if someone's interested in this question. When Mr. Horn is completed, we'll have Officer in Charge Bob Kilberry of the RCMP detachment, and he will discuss the problems that the RCMP are encountering with the existing police detachment. And then after him, Fire Chief David McKenzie will be talking about the problems with the fire hall. And both of them, all 3 of them, I understand, are going to have PowerPoints with quite a number of pictures.
Councillor Thorkelson, have you got any further questions?
The only other question I had is I was just wondering who the consultants may be. So.
At this stage, the only consultants we have hired are KMB architects, who still have not completed all the work that they were contracted to do last year. So when the time is appropriate, we can probably expect one of them to come up and start talking about building designs and building locations. But that won't be for a couple of months in any case.
Councillor Garon and then Councillor Ashley.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question about the committee that was formed to originally look into the buildings. I was noticing that the city planner was not on that list, and I have concerns that he's not on there, and I would like him to be on that committee.
Certainly. Mr. Howie.
Yes, Your Worship. The purpose of the committee so far was really to talk about the need for and some of the discussion around location. But yeah, Mr. Krekic will certainly be involved in those discussions.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I just noticed in the report, and thank you to staff for putting the effort into getting all of this information. It said that the telephone number will be displayed. Are we going to also display the email address? Because I'm assuming it would be a specific one.
Mr. Howie?
Sure.
Are there any other further questions? If not, I'll call for the question on the motion. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That's adopted. Moving on is a report from the Corporate Administrator regarding the North Central Local Government Association. That's the NCLGA 2012 Convention. There's a recommendation that Council approve or amend and then approve the following draft resolutions to be submitted to the NCLGA Convention for consideration. Mr. Grodecki, would you like to outline the text of your report?
Yes, Your Worship. The submission deadline for the NCLGA 2012 convention is March 2nd, 2012, and at the last council meeting a number of resolutions were forwarded to staff to put on a council meeting agenda for consideration. The NCLGA is the regional chapter of the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. Resolutions that garner support at the NCLGA convention will then be forwarded to the UBCM for consideration during the annual fall convention.
Thank you. We'll start excuse me, with the first resolution entitled Emergency Services Funding. Are there any comments with regards to this? There's no comments. I'll provide a comment on this. Councillor Ashley, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was wondering what the basis for this resolution is. I'm not sure who submitted it. And I would ask, I'm concerned, obviously, that there may be some assumptions made that the federal and provincial government are going to provide funding. And beyond that, just looking at the resolution, I question whether or not there's a need to have the federal and provincial governments telling us how much local government should contribute to emergency services funding. And I also find that in the last paragraph the intention and the requested results are unclear. And generally when you make a resolution and the council considers it before it goes to a larger governing body, the intent of a resolution is that the council resolves something. And I find that the last paragraph there isn't quite specific. I don't think there's anything wrong with the resolution, but there needs to be some wording changes so there is a specific resolve. And at the same time, I do question the purpose of this, and do we run the risk of having the federal and provincial governments mandate how much we should be spending? Councillor Ashley.
Okay, I'll clarify the purpose of this. In looking at all of the different types of things that we are struggling with as municipalities, local governments to fund, and the continuous increase in taxes on people to pay for various services, my intention for this resolution was not so much that they tell us what we're supposed to spend, but that they find some money in the taxes that people already pay to help people out with these costs that keep going up. For example, when we talk about policing, we have things like Prime and other things that get implemented that then we are expected to pay for, and yet there's this continuous downloading of things onto municipalities and local governments that we just continually have to just pick up and find the money somewhere. And so my intention was not so much for them to say, well, you guys need to provide this much money. And I'm absolutely wanting people to tell me some different wording, because I did send this out to people saying, please look at it. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. But my intention is that, and I've got a few different ones that are in here, but my intention is that to send a message to both provincial and federal governments, of which we are a child, right? Because they give us our rights, and they continue.
We're a child of the provincial government,
right,
not the federal.
And and then there's all the different links, anyways, and the fact that we're continually expected to pick up the pieces and pay for things that people are already paying money out of their pocket to these higher levels. And this is what I'm looking for. Is like, this is a basic service as far as I'm concerned. Emergency services. This is for the safety and well-being of our citizens. So when we're having trouble in municipalities, and it's not just our municipality, it's municipalities all across the province, to provide things like fire protection, water treatment systems, like the federal government is telling us that we have to, in a certain amount of time, have a water treatment system. Not saying those things aren't good, but they're saying do it and find the money somewhere. And they're not giving us any money. And so what I'm looking for is for them to start helping us. If they're going to tell us we have to do things, then it's time for them to start putting some money and some effort into helping us address those needs.
Then the resolution should urge assistance.
Okay, because that's
financial and otherwise.
Okay, so right now in the therefore be it resolved, it says petition the provincial and federal government to establish a committee to discuss and implement a funding formula. I thought that was asking for assistance, but if we can make it more specific and I can get some wording, I'm absolutely looking for that type of thing. But that was the purpose of the resolution. So I guess I'm looking for some help in trying to figure out how to word that more appropriately.
Mr. Howie, have you got any suggestions?
Well, just working on one, Your Worship.
Good. Well, we'll give you a minute if you like, or are you ready to go? Remembering, of course, Mr. Howie, that the forte of an administrator,
I know what's coming,
is to think quickly and speak slowly.
And to know what's coming, Your Worship. Yes, I'm just going to suggest that I don't think a committee is a bad idea. Establish a committee to discuss and implement a program providing assistance to local governments to adequately address, etc.
Any other comments with regards to this resolution? Any other suggested changes? Councillor Rice.
I think I think it's great as is. I think Mr. Howie's additions further flesh it out, but you could maybe even put just a little preamble about how the current funding formula doesn't, how it is, the third, and how that doesn't really work, or I don't know. You could just sort of take some of Councillor Ashley's
intentions,
babbling, sorry for lack of a better description, and do a preamble so that it does, because if you by reading it on its own can't figure it out, Mr. Mayor, then just maybe put the intention a little bit above, but I think it's fine.
Thank you. Mr. Howie.
I was just going to say, Your Worship, that there are so many different types of funding formula that I think it would be difficult to capture those in a whereas. They're different around capital programs, they're different around operating programs, special programs. So I think there's an opportunity to speak to the resolution from the floor, and I think that might be a time for the presenter to provide a couple of examples that Councillor Rice is talking about.
Sure. Specific wording does help to win over the audience, though. Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, it was clear to me, but that might be just because I just came through our own unions convention the last couple of days. I think Mr. Howie's modification is fine, and I would move that we adopt this as amended.
So it's been moved by Councillor Thorkelson, seconded by Councillor Ashley, that the motion be adopted as amended. Is there any further discussion? Question has been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Upon adoption, a motion becomes a resolution. The next one is shipping of dangerous goods liabilities. Perhaps for the people at home. I'm continually thinking about people that are watching this from home. It might be helpful if you went through the now therefore to be resolved, and so you cover off the resolution. People at home would have a better understanding in case they don't have the agendas in front of them.
So did you want me to do the be it resolved part first and then go through the explanations?
Well, I think if you went from now therefore be it resolved and went through those, and then you could talk about some of the whereases.
Okay.
So people get the intent and then they
For sure.
get your reasoning for it.
Okay. So the resolution being put forward, and I'll explain why later, this is to do with shipping of dangerous goods and the liabilities that are carried by various people that are shipping goods. So the first part of the resolution is, now therefore be it resolved that the Union of BC Municipalities petition the provincial and federal government to create legislation that requires that liability for cargo on a ship be the responsibility of both the carrier and the one who sold the cargo until such time as the cargo reaches its final destination and or is outside of Canadian waters. And further be it resolved that the Union of BC Municipalities petition the provincial and federal government to create legislation that requires shippers of dangerous goods and cargo, as well as the manufacturers, be required to pay into an emergency fund designed for two purposes. One, to clean up and compensate for any damages caused by an accident involving said goods and cargo, and two, to fund research into improving cleanup methods to deal with the eventuality of such spills. And the last resolution of this is that the Union of BC Municipalities petition the federal government to restore the Coast Guard complement and safety measures along our coast to a standard that protects our coastline from the dangers of such accidents and mitigates the amount of damage that would occur from the result of any such incidents. So essentially, if I break it down, I'm talking about adding liability for people, not so that, for example, in the case of something like Enbridge, when that oil is put onto tankers, if it goes through, that the people that have that oil that are shipping it somewhere else are responsible for it until it gets to its destination. And then, not only that, but that they have to actually pay into an emergency fund that deals with cleanup and compensation, as well as funding research for improving cleanup methods. And then we've had a continuous time where we keep having federal government pull back on different things like lighthouses and other different boats that are there for safety along the coast. And yet we have increased tanker traffic and boat traffic along our coast. And if we're going to have situations where there's going to be increased traffic, then we need to make sure that we have the highest standard of safety out there. Did you want me to go through the whereases?
If you feel you've covered it, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, I think this is good. The only trouble is I read what a Gold Star resolution was, and it was only supposed to have two whereases, two or fewer. So I think we can just rely on Mr. Howie or somebody else.
I think Councillor Thorkelson that Councillor Ashley was just practicing.
Yeah, to just shorten them to two whereases. I think that could be easily done. I don't want to spend our council time wordsmithing. And then the only thing that I have concern about on this resolution that I would change. And this is one of the lessons that was learned with Enbridge, and I think it's a really important lesson to learn. First of all, and I don't know what the difference would be in Canada because I haven't looked at what happened here. I was just looking at lessons learned from Enbridge regarding spills. One of the big problems with the Exxon Valdez spill was that a whole bunch of things were not allowed to be calculated into the cost of the spill. So, for example, people had bought licenses, fishing licenses, and they had bought these fishing licenses for a huge amount of money. And the licenses were devalued, and so they could only sell them for a quarter of what they had paid them for, but they were still, just like your mortgage, and you buy a house for $100,000, now it's only worth $25,000, but they were still having to pay on the $100,000, and the courts ruled that you couldn't claim the loss of your payments as a financial burden, right? As something that was because of Exxon Valdez, and they said that you couldn't claim that difference, that loss, as a capital loss. And so if somebody you actually went bankrupt because it took so many years to get any money out of it. You went bankrupt because the banks kept asking for payments. You couldn't sell it because it wasn't worth anything, and your fishing seasons were shitty, so you couldn't pay for it, and so people just ended up losing their licenses and going bankrupt. So there was also no payments to include the loss of social or cultural items. So, like, what is the value of food fish? Right, it's not just the value of what a steak would be in the or going to get a fillet of hake from the store as compared to a salmon. It would be. So it wouldn't be what you could replace it with. It's also the whole historical and cultural and traditional experience. And they refused, even though there are ways to value that, they refused to allow any values on that. So I was looking at adding to this, instead of any damages, any and all damages, including financial, and I wasn't quite sure what to call it, but it was like I said capital investment. What I was really talking about was a loss in capital depreciation, maybe your worship you would know, and social, culture, and ecological damages. But so that would be my recommendation, and I know I've already spoken, but I would like to move that we say any and all damages, including financial. Would it be capital devaluation?
Yes.
Social, cultural, and ecological.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Kinney. Oh. Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
I was just wondering, does this not fall under our maritime laws and under liability? It doesn't. Councillor Rice, and also, can you clarify?
Let's do these one at a time.
Okay. Yeah.
Councillor Rice, you had a comment.
Comment would be that Canada has an oil spill cleanup fund, which shippers of oil contribute small amounts of money to, and it goes into a pool where there's any oil spill cleanup, or any oil spill that needs to be cleaned up, and that fund can be drawn upon. And currently it's about a $1.3 million in that pot, which covers all of Canada. And just to put it in perspective, the Exxon Valdez oil spill that happened in 1989 was actually a $7 billion cleanup spill. And that's just the cleanup cost. That's not talking about compensation. In compensation, it was determined that the Exxon Valdez owed people approximately $5 billion in compensation. But then after, I don't know how many years of litigation, it tied up in the courts with their expensive lawyers and just normal citizens and fishermen dying because they were old and they were in courts for 10 plus years, but not being able to afford to compete with Exxon, or with the oil company Exxon, in the end, they only had to pay out $500,000. So $7 billion for a spill over however many years ago.
Excuse me, Councillor. The question was about maritime law. So if you would comment on that as opposed to giving us the whole history, please.
I think it actually pertains to the law. That's saying the law isn't adequate.
Okay,
if I could summarize that, then thank you.
Next, you had another question, Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
Yeah, also it might be actually directed right back at Councillor Rice there.
Please go ahead and
ask.
About
the importing and the exporting, the responsibility of, and I see it in here, the one who sold the cargo until such time as the cargo reaches its final destination. So whose responsibility would it be had something drastic like that happen?
Councillor Rice.
I need to digest that question again.
Please read the question again.
I'm just wondering who the responsible party would be if something were to happen, like an oil spill and with the Enbridge. Or
I could babble on forever, but I'll try not to. I think it depends on where it happens. B, there's a certain amount of money from that fund that would be drawn into, and then it's up to the taxpayers of Canada to actually deal with the repercussions of an accident should an accident happen.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
Well, I can give you the comment and the answer that was given when I asked the Enbridge people that were here, because I specifically asked, and after having asked them a couple of times, I finally did get an answer. I asked them, once it's on the ship, who is responsible? If there is a spill, who is responsible? And they definitely said it wasn't them, and it was the shipper of the goods. So that is why I put the resolution the way that I did, because I wanted to make sure, and it's not just with Enbridge, but any of these types of bigger projects, I want to make sure that when our coast and whatever is being put at risk, that the people that are putting it at risk are maintaining that liability.
That is correct. Enbridge's responsibility at the end of the pipeline is over. Councillor Carlick-Pearson, do you have another question? Councillor Thorkelson.
Just on that issue of responsibility, there's because I get my package in paper, I'm not sure if you get a copy of the magazines that come, or if I'm the only one that gets a copy of the magazines, because there's a magazine called I think it's called The Shipper, and I get that every month in my council package, and it 2 magazines ago, I believe it was 2 magazines ago, they had a whole 4-page article on liability, and I think that's really worth reading. It basically says that the government passed a law limiting liability of the shippers, and if there is any large accident, it will be the government of Canada that picks up the tab. So people should read that article. It's in the Shipper, and I'm not going to. I didn't memorize it for a test, but it really is interesting. And if anybody else wants to read it, we have a copy. I put my copy upstairs at T-Buck at the Fisherman's Hall.
Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
I actually have that article, and because I was just at a shipping conference last week, and our mayor is actually in it, so I brought him back some memorabilia from my trip. Anyways, I'm not sure if it only falls under the Canada for liability, because there are the responsibility of the agents, the shippers, the exporting country, the parties involved in receiving it. Like, there's so many different parties that are going to be liable for this. So, and it is a great article if anybody has a chance to read that.
Certainly.
The only thing I wanted to say is that the reason I wanted this on there is that while I realize there are many different parties that could potentially be liable, I wanted to make sure that the people that had the big pockets were liable as well.
Right. The oil companies themselves do have a fund. They do have an organization of which they do have a facility here in Prince Rupert. But I understand the concern, certainly. Councillor Rice.
I think this will be my last comment on the issue, but because I don't think I was specific enough, but just from what Councillor Carlick-Pearson was saying, I think that's one of the challenges that we have in maritime law, is that you can own a ship from one country, register it in another, flag it from another, and the cargo is from a totally other country, and
crew it from another,
and crew it from a completely other country. And that is one of the problems that happens, is that when it comes down to tracking down who's responsible, it's really impossible. It's nearly impossible to actually find the true responsible party. And because it's so complex and complicated, that things end up defaulting to taxpayers because it's too complex to actually track down the appropriate party.
Thank you. The motion's been moved and seconded. With the Mr. Grodecki.
It's been moved and seconded, Councillor Thorkelson's amendment, which I'll take a shot at. Just to jump in on one, to clean up and compensate for any and all damages, including capital, devaluation, financial, social, cultural, and ecological damage by an accident involving said goods and cargo, etc.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded with the amendment. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That's adopted. We'll move on to the next proposed resolution pertaining to an auditor for local government. This is with regard to Bill 20. Councillor Ashley, would you like to speak to this?
It's not mine.
Councillor Thorkelson. Stranger things have happened here. Please go ahead, Councillor.
It probably is going to be one of many resolutions of a similar type going to the North Coast, North Central Local Government Association, and I think that, in my opinion, it's a waste of money. If there's anybody whose budget has gone over the fine-tooth comb, it has to be the municipality's budget. And to have to pay for an auditing service to come in and audit what our auditors audit, and what we go through the fine-tooth comb, what our poor staff suffers through to change the budget, and the public can have a question on the budget when we present it. It just seems to be overkill, and I just really think that it was a sop to the Canadian Tax Federation and their demand of this government to back municipalities off of business taxes, and I think that certainly we need to be reasonable and look at all kinds of savings wherever we can find savings, but I don't think that this is going to help us. I think this is going to hinder us and interfere in what already is a delicately balanced and highly open and public budget process.
Highly scrutinized.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorkelson, you may remember that when Mr. Roden joined the city of Prince Rupert, he had a full head of hair.
Good.
Is there anything further? Councillor Ashley.
I'll move that we forward this.
Seconded by Councillor Kenny. Mr. Howie, have you got any comment with regards to the establishment of an Auditor General for local governments?
Your Worship, actually I'm working on a report for the next council meeting, not on this particular aspect, the creation, but on the steering committee that will be guiding the Auditor General and the composition of that, and I think that might be worth Council sending a letter to the appropriate minister, but I won't have it until the next agenda.
Thank you. This has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That's adopted. We'll move on to a resolution regarding federal and provincial matching infrastructure grant requirements. Councillor Ashley, would you like to outline the text of your proposed resolution?
Sure. I'll do the same thing as I did before, as opposed to going through all the whereases, because I'm sure that the reasons are fairly self-evident. But basically, the resolution is, now therefore be it resolved that the Union of BC Municipalities petition the provincial and federal government to revise their grant formula so that they do not require matching funding, or come up with a new system that allows cash-strapped local governments to address their critical infrastructure needs without having to borrow money to do so. And essentially, I've just got listed things like that tax increases are not sustainable, that we have huge infrastructure deficits, and that we're already paying taxes. We need them to start giving us money back. And the fact that they've got matching, that they require matching money, just basically means that those communities that do not have lots of money can't access this money. So that's essentially what the resolution is about.
Thank you. Would somebody like to move the resolution? Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Rice. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That's adopted. Local government funding. Would you like to review this one, Councillor Ashley?
Sure. It's related, but it's a little bit different. So the resolutions, now therefore be it resolved that the UBCM petition the provincial and federal government to establish a committee to discuss, establish, and implement a funding formula that ensures that a percentage of taxes already collected from citizens, business, and industry at the provincial and federal level be given back to local governments to deal with the infrastructure deficit in their community. And further be it resolved that the Union of BC Municipalities petition the provincial and federal government to provide local governments with increased power and abilities to use alternative methods to obtain revenue needed to deal with these infrastructure deficits. And I realize that we already get money from the gas tax, but I still think we need more. So I'm going to keep asking.
Certainly. I'll just give you a comment on your resolution that you're in fact outlining what already happens. And so you may wish to put a finer point on it. For instance, in your second portion there, to provide governments with increased power and abilities to use alternate methods to obtain revenue. As an example, here in Prince Rupert, City West gives us a dividend of $100 million a year. So that, pardon me, $1 million a year. Sorry, Mr. Howie. Get you. Don't want to see you break out into a sweat in already a council chambers as representative of a meat cooler today, but
I'm certainly open to having some ideas.
Yeah.
Well, I get maybe it would help if I explained what I was looking for.
Okay, my point is that I wouldn't want to send a resolution out asking for something that we already do or something that we already have.
Okay, so I guess I'm looking for, and I would be looking for help in terms of the wording on this, but I'm looking for something more. So some sort of thing. For example, in Saskatchewan, and I'm not sure how this has gone, but they have a percentage of their provincial sales tax that goes back to municipalities. I know we've got the gas tax, and I guess what I'm looking for is one, some sort of funding formula that, in addition to the gas tax, because we have huge infrastructure problems. And then in terms of alternative methods, I guess I'm looking at the fact that really our only, while we do have City West, I realize, our basic means of obtaining revenue are property taxes or increasing fees. And I'm looking for them to give us some more power. If they're going to continue to tell us we have to do things, they need to start giving us some power in order to be able to do those things. And I'm not sure what those things are. And so I'm looking for some feedback on that.
Certainly. Any other comments? Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, you could actually, in the therefore, the second resolve, just put in alternate methods brackets such as sales tax and other forms of revenue generation. If council,
I would like to add that.
Similar to a hotel tax, that sort of thing. Certainly.
Okay. And I will move the thing with the added.
You'll move the
resolution with the added
with
amendment.
the friendly amendment.
Yes.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Garon. Are there any other comments from members of council? Councillor Thorkelson.
My concern is that I really don't want another method of being able to get more tax from the same people, right? So just a method like, you know, what I really like is the provincial and federal governments to do what Councillor Ashley said in her last resolution. We should stop downloading things onto us and then demanding that we pay for it. And then the other thing is to increase funding to municipalities directly from the federal and provincial budgets, so that they share their funding with us. So not necessarily permitting us to put another tax on people for doing something, right? But to obtain revenue needed, by my thing is by provincial and federal government coughing up more money, support municipalities, or taking over some of the responsibilities that municipalities have. I mean, there's only two choices, right? And I mean, we can just put another tax on. Unless we're taxing Alaska tourists, we're really only taxing ourselves in a different, just finding a more ingenious way, not ingenuous, but ingenious way to have a tax. So I have a problem with that that idea about with increased power and ability to use alternate methods. I really just say that insurers' percentage of taxes already collected be given back to local governments to deal with the infrastructure deficit in their communities, period. And forget about finding another way to raise taxes from people in the community. Just they can just cough up money otherwise and quit downloading. Sorry, I just came from a convention, really. I have to get my mind out of this, right?
I was waiting for you to comment on taxes being very disingenuous.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're disingenuous whatsoever.
If the council wishes to utilize Councillor Thorkelson's words, we should withdraw the mover and the seconder of this motion as it is, wordsmith in Councillor Thorkelson's words, or leave it to staff to do that and adopt the motion with the change. Councillor Ashley.
I'm willing to withdraw the motion. I actually think I have a simpler solution.
Okay. The seconder was Councillor Garon. Okay. Please go ahead, Councillor.
I think that I do appreciate what Councillor Thorkelson said, and my intention was that we need to get more money and not continue to ask people in our own community to pay money that they've already paid. So I think it would be solved by just getting rid of the last further be it resolved and just leave the resolution like that.
Okay. Comments on that?
So I would move it that way, with the last further be it resolved gone.
So moved by Councillor Ashley, and seconded by Councillor Garon. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Next is the resolution concerning Canada-Europe Union Trade Agreement.
Not me.
Who contributed this? Please go ahead. Explain the text of it for people that are watching from home, please.
This is the Canadian-European European Union EU trade agreement, which is called CETA or CETA. And this is one of a series of international trade agreements that have been going on that could impact municipalities. Probably won't impact Prince Rupert until we double or triple our size and make it worthwhile for British engineering to come in here and compete with local firms to do certain things. But
have you got, Councillor Thorkelson, any idea on the dates in which we'll double and triple in size?
Well, I was hoping that was by next year, Your Worship, but but it may not be. But it's the idea that the Canadian and provincial governments can go and without reference to municipalities make rules that change how municipalities are able to put out either services for bid or for procurement. And so this says that it's just a disclosure, really, that the BC government, as our representative with the Canadian government, issue a clear permanent exemption for BC local governments, so that we request that we're exempted from it, so that we do not have to put our bids out to EU, anybody from the EU, and that it protect the powers of local governments. It requests the BC government to disclose what it is putting on the table regarding the procurement services and investment as part of CETA, explain the impacts of CETA on municipal governance, and give local governments the freedom to decide whether or not they'd be bound by the agreement. They probably won't like that, but I think it's a good thing to have in there. Send this resolution to the UBCM and the FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and to MPs and MLAs. And the TILMA, there was a TILMA, which was the agreement. Anybody remembers what it was?
Mr. Howie?
Poor Mr. Howie. Right. And that.
Thank you, Mr. Roden.
And that at least the UBCM got the provincial government, and we had some input into that. I don't really know what the end result of that was. And there's a few more now after this one. This is CETA. Now the federal government announced that they were going to try to make a free trade agreement with China, and we don't know how it's going to impact us as a municipality, as a corporate body municipality. So really this just calls on BC to do what they did with TILMA, which was sit down and have a committee from the UBCM and the provincial government to have a discussion on what the impact of CETA was, and to try to ameliorate any of the effects that CETA would have on us.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on this from members of council? If not, I'll look for a mover and a seconder to this, please. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Thorkelson, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Any further considerations? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That is adopted. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And that would be the additional item tonight, and that's a request from the Prince Rupert Novice Tournament, which is being held on March 9th to 11th, 2012. And the request is for this is for the players, which vary, but most are 7 and 8 years old. They expect an attendance of 150 children, and the request is that they be provided with swim passes so that they can utilize the Jim Saccone Civic Center as well as the Irma Aquatic Center. Mr. Howie, I believe the cost is about $300.
Oh, that's correct, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll ask Council's consideration of this matter. Councillor Giron.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think these sporting events are wonderful, but this is asking for door prizes and donations. It sounds like this event is being well taken care of financially. I don't know what our policy is on door prizes and they're not asking for anything specific other than the swim passes, and I don't know if this is normally something that we do.
We'll get a comment from staff. Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, I believe that they may have received swim passes in previous years, but City Council has over the last few years tightened up the requirements and the process around giving grants to community groups. This is a request for swim passes for 150 kids, and the cost of that is $300.
I'll ask Council's consideration of the matter. Or Councillor Guerin, did you want to make a motion?
Well, I'm not going to be very popular, but I'm going to make a motion that they go to the community maybe to have some of the businesses or community members buy some of these swim passes and have them then donated to the children. I mean, if every group comes to us saying they want free swim passes for all these events, who's to say that the next group's going to come forward and the next group? We do have our procedures for applying for grants, and this does not fall into that. So I'm going to say just receive and file this notice. Is that a motion, or do I?
No, you can make a motion to receive and file the request. A more polite way would be to decline the request and ask them to go to the community at large. But the choice is yours.
Okay,
I'll make receive and file.
I'll make a request that we decline the request and ask them to go to the community
at large.
At large.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ashley. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councillor Ashley.
I know that it's, as Councillor Guerin said, it may not be the most popular thing, but we have been trying to tighten our belts, and I think that with something like this, it's important that we remind people how much we subsidize the Civic Center already. We don't make any money off of any of the things at the Civic Center. Where I can't remember the exact amount, but I believe it's, and maybe Mr. Roden might have a better idea. But
Councillor Ashley, the fees and charges collected at recreation facilities cover about a third of the annual cost, roughly.
Okay, thank you. So while I appreciate and all of the volunteer work that goes in with the Minor Hockey Association, as with all of the different volunteer groups around the community, we do have a grant process, and I would expect something like this would be part of that grant process. And in addition, when we're being asked to make a donation or financial contributions towards door prizes and then swim passes as well, I think that in situations like that we have to start saying to people that we need to have the community provide support for those types of things, because we have roads, sewer, water, etc. that we need to take care of.
Thank you. Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
Yeah, I really appreciate the tournament that they're actually hosting, and we were talking about this in previous meetings, that we need to do what we can to try and promote Prince Rupert as a appealing place to be. And I know that we're under financial restraint right now. I understand that. However, having a tournament like this, like the All Native tournament, like any other tournament that we do have in Prince Rupert, we bring in a lot of people, and I think what they're asking for here are the swim passes mostly to go into bags for the kids and the families that are coming to Prince Rupert to participate in this event. And I know that it's tough to give everyone donations, and it's hard to say no at the same time, but we should start looking at tournaments and children's groups that require these services, because even though people may assume that the hockey players have come from wealthy families or whatever, or think that they could afford to play hockey, and so why can't they do this or that? Well, that's not true. There's a lot of kids that struggle with this, so with financing hockey. So I think it's a big thing for them to be able to come down to Prince Rupert to play, and I think it's a great way for Prince Rupert to promote this event.
So you think that perhaps we should develop a policy?
I think that we should develop a policy to at least consider kids groups, not, maybe not all adult group activities, but definitely children's groups like this, 7-8-year-olds that do come and propose this to us.
Yeah, Councillor, if you like, we can deal with this particular motion, and then you could make a motion asking that staff present some sort of information regarding a possible policy that could be made up regarding these sorts of things, if you'd like. Councillor Ashley.
I do appreciate what Councillor Carlick-Pearson is saying, and I guess my thing is here, when I look at there's 150 kids and it's going to cost about $300, that's $2 a kid. And I'm not sure how that's a financial burden to a family for $2 a kid. And it's not that I don't appreciate it, and I think that having a policy is a good idea. But in terms of just what my beliefs are in terms of how we are giving out grants and how we are trying to, I guess, focus, at least in my opinion, trying to focus on what the basic needs of our community are, then I just don't want to. It's a slippery slope, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. We say yes to one group, but every group that comes before us is going to be the same type of thing. They're all going to look good. So having a policy, I think, is a great idea, but I'm still going to be voting against this. I may be outvoted, but that's how I'm going to be voting.
Councillor Garon, Councillor Kenny, and then Councillor Thorkelson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Ashley said. We do subsidize the Civic Centre already by 2/3, so that is a huge contribution that we already make, and that's where I'm going to keep standing on this motion that I made.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in favor of doing it because I feel with our youth, we have to start doing some things to keep our youth in our city and to support them. And I feel strongly in this because we argue about having them off the street and everything else. Well, we should do a few things to help the youth.
Thank you. Councillor Thorkelson.
Well, see, I just look at this as what it really is going to cost us. If not one kid goes to the swimming pool, it only costs us the price of the tickets, right? And if a kid goes to the swimming pool and we have 10 kids that go to the swimming pool, then we've only lost $20 because you're only losing $2 on a kid that actually attends, other than the price of the printing the ticket. But I'm wondering how much it costs, Your Worship, because I don't know. I should know, but I don't know how much it costs to rent the pool for an hour.
Mr. Howie.
I think it's about $100 an hour. Yeah, but this would be admission to a regular public swim.
You see, Your Worship, what I look at this is that there is no cost to the city, because the cost to the city is having, if we have the same number of lifeguards on. The cost to the city is actually the lifeguards. I suppose you can add wear and tear. See Mr. Roden's head looking at wear and tear, but I guess you have wear and tear, but I don't think you have to add any more chlorine, and I don't think you have to have any more hot water, and I don't think
you actually do.
More
have
chlorine?
To add more chlorine, yes.
Okay, so if we have 20 more kids in there, we can add a drop more of chlorine. As long as we don't know what happened.
Let's not oversimplify this. It's a little bit more than 20 kids. But anyway, go on.
Well, but they said expect an attendance of 150 kids for the hockey tournament. I don't know if we expect for 150 kids to go swimming. I doubt it. So, I mean, if we expected 150 kids to go swimming, my guess is that you'll have to add another lifeguard, which would be an expense. And so that's why I was wondering is if what they actually want is for all 150 kids to go swimming, then they should rent the pool for an hour. If they expect that everybody just gets a ticket and 20 kids go swimming, well then that's a contribution of $40 we've made. And so that's what I'm saying. So I really don't think I think that Councillor Carlick-Pearson was correct when she said they just want to put the tag in the bag and the kid can look at the ticket if the kid wants to go swimming, if it's a regular swim session, and if he goes in a night session, somebody else goes in an afternoon session, as long as you're not adding a lifeguard. You might have to add a squirt more of chlorine, although we do hope it's not the amount of chlorine that was added in...
Counselor, we might be better off to consider the request rather than the conjecture.
Well, all I'm saying is it's not costing us $300, unless every kid takes advantage of it and we have to hire more lifeguards.
We don't know that. So you look at the request, you make the decision based on the request. Counselor Carlick Pearson.
I like the logistics of Councillor Thorkelson, though. No, that's right. Like if they there's 2 days. There's 2 days of hockey, I believe. So throughout those 2 days, the kids are going to be attending public swimming sessions, which aren't all day. They're not all day long. There's a couple public swimming sessions throughout the day. So she is right that we might not lose exactly $300. But on the other note, the $2 per kid, it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you go down to our civic center right now, you go outside the gym, you'll see kids sitting in the hallways there because they don't have $2 to go play basketball or to go swimming. So just a last note, and we could make a motion. Sure, I'll make a motion. Okay, how do I make a motion again?
There's already a motion on the floor.
Okay.
I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Those opposed? The motion fails. Somebody like to make a motion, please? Councillor Caron.
I'll make a motion that we devise some type of policy regarding getting letters last minute like this, and
so your motion is to request a policy.
A policy dealing with donations or swim passes that don't fit into our regular grant application, because I don't believe this fits into our regular grant application. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but my concern is that if we allow this one, we will continue to get more and more people dropping these kinds of things off. When I had my small business, everybody comes and drops one off. So it's going to snowball if we don't have some kind of a policy. And these children are coming here to play hockey. That's wonderful that we have volunteers who organize these events. They already have a chance to play hockey. There are children out there who can't afford to play hockey and can't afford to go to the pool, and I would rather give them the opportunity to go to the pool before groups who already have an opportunity to do something that most kids don't get to do.
Thank you. So there's been a motion made to develop a policy, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any discussion with regards to the motion to request a policy be developed? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That passes. Certainly. Go ahead, Councillor.
I move that we give 50 tickets to the Minor Hockey Association, and they can use them as door prizes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Rice. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. Next is correspondence for action. It's a proclamation request from Community Social Services. There's a recommendation that Council declare March as Community Social Services Awareness Month in the City of Prince Rupert. Mr. Howie, would you please outline the text of the request?
Your Worship, this is the recommendation is in response to a request from a group representing Community Social Services in British Columbia. They are asking Council to declare March Community Social Services Month, and in the body of their letter they mentioned that throughout March, community social service workers across the province will be engaging in a variety of activities to raise awareness. Some of these events may take place in Prince Rupert, such as information booths and displays in public locations, and it would be meaningful to have Council endorse the month and raise the awareness of the activities that may take place. There is a suggested proclamation on page 22, and it outlines the general whereas clauses, and then the final therefore clause is just that Community Social Services Awareness Month be designated in the city of Prince Rupert.
Thank you. I'll ask Council's consideration of this request for a proclamation. Councillor Kenny. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Ashley. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That resolution passes. We'll move on to the City Manager's report. Mr. Howie, would you like to give your report on outstanding council initiatives?
Your Worship, as you mentioned earlier on in the meeting, Council will be having a strategic planning session this week, and out of that will come report to Council on what priorities and projects Council has established for its 3-year term. So that should be completed. Hopefully we can have a report back from the facilitator in time for the first meeting in March, if not certainly for the second meeting. Just a report on the building on 3rd Avenue at 1001 and 1003 3rd Avenue. The asbestos removal in that building is underway. The contractor also has been working on other projects, particularly in houses that were damaged during the recent cold snap. But that work is underway. The community meeting is scheduled for March the 12th and 13th. Hayes Creek sewer project is essentially complete, except for the 3rd phase, which will be taking place during the next year. And the reason for that is we're doing flow monitoring to make sure that we have adequately sized pumps in that facility. Woodworth Lake Dam, we're proceeding with that, which is an inspection to see what work needs to be done. Hayes, the street lighting project, which we had looked at doing really last year, was delayed because the supplier was facing bankruptcy. We're working on that again and hope to have some activity there this year. The archives moved into City Hall some months ago, and I just want to report that the new location seems to be working out well for both the archives and the city. We've installed a new swing set in Moose Tot Lot, which was donated by the Royal Order of Moose, and Loyal Order of Moose rather, and has been some time in installing, but we did find some money to get that done. Staff have made an application for host. It's a preliminary application, and will eventually require a resolution of council. But the NCLGA, the North Central Local Government Association, is looking for host communities for the 2013 and 2014 events. The original host for 2013 had to back out, and so they're now looking for other communities. The event went very well in Prince Rupert last year, and kudos to a lot of volunteers and a lot of work in the community to pull that off. And there were positive comments, and I think we might be able to attract them back either next year or 2014. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howie. Are there any questions from members of council regarding this report? Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not on this report, but I've had a few phone calls today about the airport and its de-icer, and I was wondering if Mr. Howie could provide us with some details.
Mr. Howie?
Yes, Your Worship. Unfortunately, the piece of equipment used to de-ice aircraft has broken down. That equipment is provided by a local contractor and operated through Far West Bus Lines, and it is an agreement with the airline companies, not with the City of Prince Rupert or the Prince Rupert Airport Authority. and so they are the supplier is working to fix the piece of equipment as quickly as possible. If the weather warms up 4 degrees or so, we shouldn't have a problem, because then there's no need to de-ice. It's just this a combination of the machine breaking down over the weekend and a lack of readily available parts to repair it. But as I say, as soon as we get back into the 5-6 degree range, there won't be a problem, and hopefully the machine can be fixed sooner than that.
Thank you. Councillor Thorkelson, were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, it was about the buses and whether if there's a problem with getting on and off, or providing a bus with.
You're talking about a wheelchair accessible
access,
bus.
Yeah. And I used to regularly give them a call at Far West when one of our members, Ellis, was trying to take the bus because he needed the wheelchair access. Well, Ellis has since passed away, so nobody's called me in the last 2 years, and I saw that there's some other people who are now needing that, and I was wondering if anybody has contacted Far West.
There are concerns, and I've talked to people. We've also got some letters of concern, and the matter was referred to staff to make sure we could expedite something there. The availability of wheelchair accessible buses is a concern. Mr. Howie, do you have an update?
Yes, Your Worship. Mr. Roden has been in touch with the contractors. There are actually 6 pieces of equipment in Prince Rupert, and as luck would happen, just recently there were 3 of them out of service, so there has been a shortage. Also, we've invited a representative of BC Transit to come and meet with council, and I think that would be an appropriate topic to put on that agenda to raise the profile with BC Transit. But Mr. Roden has brought all of the concerns to the contractor's attention.
If you could get back, please, to the people that sent the letter and explain to them the...
Yeah, we're doing that, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Thorkelson.
Your Worship, when I was in Vancouver, I took one of those small community buses, and that was something we had raised with the contractor a couple of years ago, is why weren't we given those small community buses instead of the great large buses, and also buses that were run on liquid natural gas.
Are you talking about 24-seaters, or...?
Oh yeah, maybe 24-seaters. There's a small community that have a C in front of them in Vancouver for community. And I was very surprised to see almost all of them have lifts that lower at the back, and they actually are for baby buggies as well as wheelchairs. I was on there downtown, middle of Vancouver, on Denman, got off the SkyTrain, and there it is, not on Denman, on Davie, and the Davie bus stops. Bus driver gets out, lowers it, and somebody with one of those big 3-wheel baby buggy baby buggies gets on, and they lock it up, and they actually have a baby buggy locking place. And I was really impressed, and I thought, all this technology goes on, and we have buses that we can't even load on the front with a that break down. And it's not just this year. It's a pretty regular basis that I used to phone Far West for Ellis. So, somehow we should try to get some, buses that reflect our needs. And I'm glad to hear, Mr. Howie, that transit's coming to town.
And also the particular brand of bus that's out there right now for that particular service, there are considerable complaints from municipalities throughout BC about the reliability of that particular model. So.
Are there any further questions of Mr. Howie? If not, we'll move on to reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. And Mr. Howie, I'll start. Excuse me, Councillor Kinney. I continue to get complaints about dogs running at large down in the Rotary Waterfront Park, to the point where people are telling me that dogs running at large are taking over the park, and there are concerns about nobody picking up after the dogs, whether it's people that let their dogs run at large down there, or whether it's people that are transiting the area. But over time, I guess it's become the Rotary Waterfront Park has become the unofficial dog yard or dog area. I know there's a consideration for a dog park in the city's considerations for the 2012 budget, but at the same time we're getting complaints from people that are not dog owners, and certainly their use of that park is being infringed upon, and I would like to have the people notified. I'm not sure how you would do that, whether you want to post something down there or whether you want to send the bylaw enforcement officer down there, but we are getting a lot of concerns.
Your Worship, we do patrol that, but not as often as we would like. Part of that's a question of resources, but I'll speak to bylaw and we'll increase that, and we'll take a look at some more visible signage as well.
We've also been hearing from people who think that the gate at Wantage Road should be locked so people do not dump refuge and furniture and other things down there. And I'm wondering if it's possible for staff to do a report to council to consider either locking that gate and having restricted access by people who need to go out there, although I dislike the thought of that because there are kids that go out there and use it to recreate, which I don't really have a problem with, but we should consider locking that gate or consider the installation of a camera somewhere along there where we have a source of power, and perhaps we could run a tape, and if there's areas out there that are being dumped on, perhaps that tape will be used in order to get the offenders.
We'll do a report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny and then Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to take this time to thank Tanya Osterman and her crew for the midgets winning the zone in Terrace. I think it's a job well done, and being a city employee, she's busy all the time, but she's really involved with it, and they came through as winners. Hockey.
Thank you. Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
I was wondering if we could invite the Department of Fisheries in to have a meeting with them to update the halibut sports fishery, before the actual fishing season begins, because last year we were hit with a downsize of the fishing halibut limits for last year, and it's really affected not only the fishing industry but also the tourism for Prince Rupert. Just to get some clarity on it and to find out where we could go as council.
There has been a 5% increase in the limit.
Since when?
For this year. Councillor Thorkelson, perhaps you have some information on that.
There's a 15% decrease to the commercial fishery, which is a 5% increase to the recreational fishery, because it depends on what basis you're looking for percentages on. What happens was there was a fish taken out of the commercial allocation and given to the recreation allocation, and which has meant a 15% cut for every quota holder in the commercial fisheries. So you can imagine there's quite a few commercial fishermen who have had their quota cut by 20% or 15% are going to have 15% less take-home pay, or have to increase their leasing of quota by 15% in order to be made whole. There is also, for the sports fishermen, a reduction in the length of time that halibut is going to be able to be held. The biggest problem probably is, and there's many problems, and there needs to be a real discussion on how to deal with this. But the one of the problems is that the commercial fishermen feel that they're not going to be made whole. The recreational fishermen feel that they need more in order to keep their businesses up, and the commercial fishermen pay a lot of money in order to be monitored, and every fish that's brought on board a vessel has a camera on it and a picture taken of it, and there's the counting of recreational halibut is not done well, and so So, and that's partly the reason why we think that the department is not extending the season, is because even though there's an increase in the poundage that the sports sector catches, is very difficult to see what they actually do catch, and so they've determined that there's going to be a reduction. On top of all of that, there has been a reduction every year for the last 4 years or maybe 5 years of the whole pie. So the whole pie is being reduced. And so the recreational community has said that the whole pie is reduced, but we don't want to be numerically reduced. So we want to have the same numerical catch out of the pie, which of course means that the numerical catch of the other user has to go down in order for the one user to remain whole and have the same numerical catch. So it's an exceedingly complex issue, and it's also a very emotional issue. And I think last year when I wasn't here, I was probably in a meeting in Vancouver, you had two presenters, one from the recreational community, I think, and one from the commercial community, to talk about it. What the real issue is that there's a real worry that DFO, or the Pacific Halibut Commission, has not made proper determinations of total allowable catch, and in fact the total allowable catch may be decreased very severely in future years. And the other thing is that because there is not a really good process for accounting for recreational harvest, particularly recreational discards, that perhaps all of the halibut that's being caught isn't being accounted for. And so those are. I don't want to open up an argument on recreational catching or accounting for creel surveys or all of that stuff here, because it is a complicated issue. And I'm not going to even suggest that people are cheating. I'm just suggesting that the accounting is not maybe done properly. But it's going to be, if we think it's a problem now, if they cut the quota by a third, which is the whole TAC by a third, the whole total allowable catch for all of British Columbia, or actually all British Columbia, Washington, and the United States by a third, as has been suggested, what we've seen now is with this kind of problem is going to be really exacerbated, because how do you fairly share that? And there is no system to fairly share that. It's at the minister's discretion, and the minister has made a decision to do that. And that's unfortunate that there is no way of figuring this kind of thing out.
Thank you for your comment, Councillor Carlick, simply because you brought it up, and then Councillor Ashley.
Okay, so the limits were increased, or were they like?
Depends what fishery you're involved in.
I'm talking about sports fishing.
Yes.
That's what I addressed
yes.
Initially, was the sports fishing. What was it increased by?
5%.
It was 5%. So it's not going by catch; it's going by percentage, or how does that work?
Councillor Thorkelson.
The sharing formula was somebody's going to write me a letter and tell me but the sharing formula, I think, was 88 or 85.15, and it went up to 88.12. No, the other way around. 88.12, and it went down to 85.15. Okay, so there was an increase in the percentage of the of the pie that was given. But the trouble is the pie has shrunk, so the numerical value has likely gone down, because I think the pie shrunk more than the actual increase in percentage was given. So the pie shrunk smaller than the increase in percentage numerically would give more to the sports community. So the sports community got more as a percentage. They got more numerically, but they still don't have the number that they had 2 years ago. So and that's mainly because the TAC decreased.
Their season will still be impacted. Councillor Carlick Pearson.
And I'm not on more on one side than the other side. I grew up in a fishing industry family, and so I'm fully on the same page as you, Joy.
Councillor Ashley.
Just getting back to what Councillor Carlick Pearson was talking about in terms of having DFO come in. When I hear both sides, it seems to mean that both sides are hurting from this. We have concerns about allocation in the commercial industry and jobs affected by that. We have concerns because my belief is that the season has been shortened to like August 15th or something for charter fishing.
Shortened to the beginning of July.
Oh, okay, so we have a shorter season, and that's going to impact. I mean, I know that when Bruce Wishart has presented us before, and as well he's presented in my tourism class, has told us about the amount of money that charter fishing brings into our community in terms of tourism. So we've got concerns on both ends of the spectrum, and it seems like there's a problem with how they do this. So I think it makes sense for us to get DFO in here and start working towards a solution.
And do you think a meeting here with DFO is going to solve anything?
It certainly can't hurt anything.
Actually, it's Pacific Halibut Commission you may wish to talk to. Councillor Thorkels.
I don't think it ever hurts for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to come and hold their feet in the fire and explain that they're hurting the community. And you know, one thing that always angers me is that on the East Coast there's not a committee that doesn't have communities on it, and on this coast there's not an advisory board with communities on it. And it is a policy on the East Coast that communities must be included or be invited to the advisory boards. On this coast, when we demanded that communities be, for example, on the salmon advisory boards, DFO said over our dead bodies, basically. And so they do not include them. And so, I mean, I think DFO should be brought. I don't think we're going to... I think it's very complicated and it's very difficult and to divide a shrinking pie. And as you can well imagine, I can come up with a very passionate argument on both sides. I can just say it's very difficult to have a shrinking pie. And there's lots of people who are trying to make a living off of the commercial off fishing, commercial fishing, whether it's commercial sports or commercial marine commercial. But I always love holding DFO's feet to the fire because they never consulted with us as a community or with any other community at how we thought it should be done. And it may be that we would have said, this is the amount of halibut, and we want these other regulations in place in order to stretch the season. It may be that we would have had some solutions to bringing in tourists to our community that would have made charter boat operators.
However, Councillor, having said all of that,
yes,
the Pacific Halibut Commission sets the allocation.
They shrink. Yes, they set the allocation.
So
but
would it not hurt to get a member of the Pacific Halibut Commission here?
Well, the Pacific Halibut sets not the allocation between the sports and the recreational community and the commercial. The Halibut Commission sets the international catch and the catch by area. One of the areas is BC, and then after that, the Government of Canada decides what it's going to do, how it's going to allocate that catch. And so it's the total allowable catch is supposed to be scientific and set by a bunch of high-paid scientists that are doing whatever they're doing to determine whatever the total allowable catch is, which it looks like they've made an error. And so this issue is going to be before our community, I believe. The writing is on the wall, and the issue is going to be before the community every year. And I think that the communities in British Columbia need to have a say in how the industry is run, particularly the sports industry, and the tourism it brings to our community. And that is what I think the Department of Fisheries should be told. And I think they should be very squarely told that you should not be making decisions on allocation issues and opening and closing issues that impact the community's well-being without at least consulting and hearing what our concerns are first. And that is what I think should be put squarely on DFO's plate. Now, they'll just tell us to buzz off. But I think that I mean, the guy that runs this office here, Mel Kotick's a good guy, right? Nice fellow. But he's not going to make that decision. But it doesn't hurt to put pressure on him, and if other communities put pressure on their area managers, that it might be the RDG gets the message and the RDG takes that back and says the East Coast is doing it, why shouldn't we? One of the other interesting things, just
if I could, just before you get steamrolling there, Councillor, perhaps rather than have a meeting with the local manager of the DFO, we request it with the Western Regional Director.
I think with the RDG, that would be nice.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Sure. I move that we request that the RDG come and listen to Council's concerns on a variety of issues on fishing regarding the impacts on our communities.
So you've rolled salmon and halibut and herring together now?
I just think that they should hear all of the things that we have concerns about, and all of them.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
And I will tell you.
Is there any?
Yes.
If you
I will tell you why that's a wise thing to do right now.
Well, if you'd wait a minute, I'll give you that
Sure.
opportunity. Is there any discussion with regards to the motion made? Please go ahead, Councillor.
There's a new policy that came up, and it's been given 2 months to have input on it. Nobody really knew about it the first month, and people are now aware of it. And it is a policy. It's called modernization. It's not called modernization. I can't remember what it is, but it's a national policy. We call it the modernization policy, and it's a national policy, and they want to make all policies equal across Canada, because there's very many policies that aren't equal across Canada. So, for example, on the East Coast, they have an owner-operator policy and a fleet separation policy, which says that boats under 65 feet they have quotas back there, but you can't stack your quotas, and if they do have stackable quotas, you have to be operating a boat in order to lease your quota or to get your quota. So it's an owner-operator provision. They also have fleet separation, which means processing companies can't own licenses or quotas that go on a vessel of less than 65 feet. We don't have that on our coast. So that would be an example of a policy. There's myriads of policies that have been developed because they make sense for each fishery. Now DFO wants to get rid of many of those smaller policies and just have blanket policies for both coasts, including things like evergreen fishing plans, which would be they would never change a fishing plan. Unless there's huge changes in the ocean, stock assessment, only once every 2 or 3 years they're going to do stock assessment. So they're just trying to make the department a lot smaller and walk away from it. People want to see it. The last chance to say anything about this, and they're consulting everybody across Canada, not just fishermen, everybody across Canada. If you live in the middle of the prairies, you can have a say in it. And it's on the DFO consultation site, and it's called something like a National Fisheries Policy for Canada, or New Fisheries Policy for Canada. And February 29th, all consultations will be over. They've one consultation session in Vancouver. One consultation in Nova Scotia, one consultation in New Brunswick, one consultation in Newfoundland. And they're going to come up with a policy that basically guts all of their other policies. And so maybe the RDG should come in and talk to us about it, because maybe one of the policies they should institute is a policy that says that we have our own fisheries minister on this coast, and we try to run things our own way in this coast. But anyway, it might be a really handy-dandy time to ask the RDG to come here and explain our modernization and talk about community input into fisheries.
Thank you. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Councillor Thorkelson, I was going to mention something else about a court case involving fishing, but I'll save it till after the meeting. However, I will say this. I understand that a test boat at the mouth of the Skeena is in jeopardy, and there's been a family there that's been operating that for 3 generations as a result of a court case where a decision was made that you can't take money earned from the resource to continue to monitor it, which I think certainly is not a good way to proceed. Councillor Ashley.
When we were talking earlier about the Coastal Ferry Act review,
yes.
I said that I had some wording towards a resolution that we were talking about.
Certainly.
So I was just going to share that and see if people
Certainly.
had any
Please
feedback.
Go ahead.
So basically, it says, whereas BC Ferries is an essential part of the provincial marine highway system that is their financial responsibility, and whereas there's a proposal to make local and regional governments pay for enhanced ferry services that are part of that responsibility, now therefore be it resolved that the provincial government fully fund the marine highway as part of our provincial highway system in order to provide reasonable and affordable access to all areas serviced by BC Ferries.
Would you like to make that a motion?
I would make that a motion.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kinney.
And I'm certainly open if staff, that looks good? Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. Councillor Thorpe?
I think Councillor Rice was trying to get her hand up there. And if not, I've got to put my hand up.
Councillor Rice?
So in light of the presentation we received earlier this evening from the Prince Rupert Environmental Society, I've been considering something that was sent to me recently, and that was the fact that the Joint Review Panel, which is the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency and the National Energy Board that is looking at the Enbridge Northern Gateway pipelines and tanker proposal, they've been soliciting our feedback as local government. They want our input, and it's great that we actually submitted the great report that we did, I think, which was really well done. But a lot of other municipalities have been weighing the pros and cons of actually taking a neutral stance versus actually taking a position, and I think that considering they are soliciting our input, that we actually should take a formal position, and we should adopt the resolution that was recently passed with our neighbours, the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District, as well as Terrace passed a similar motion. And also to reflect on the fact that 2 years ago, the UBCM, the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, a resolution sort of, asking for a legislated tanker ban was passed. So I propose that we actually adopt the exact same resolution that the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District recently passed.
Would you like to read out the now therefore so that people will get an understanding that are in the audience and at home, please?
Yeah. And I just really wanted to think, I was really thinking about what one of the speakers said, I can't remember who said it, was that if we do sit silent, it will be taken as acceptance. So I think it's really imperative that we actually go forward and take a stance. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Prince Rupert, thank you, I just have to, therefore be it resolved that the City of Prince Rupert be opposed to any expansion of bulk crude oil tanker traffic, as well as bitumen export in Dixon Entrance, Hecate Strait, and Queen Charlotte Sound in British Columbia. And be it further resolved that the City of Prince Rupert petition the federal government to establish a legislated ban on bulk crude oil tanker traffic and bitumen export through Dixon Entrance, Hecate Strait, and Queen Charlotte Sound in British Columbia.
And that's your motion.
That is my motion.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Thorkelson. Is there any discussion? Councillor Ashley.
I'll be voting in favor, and I'm just going to quickly list off reasons. We've heard many different presentations from Enbridge. We've heard presentations from community members. Certainly we've heard from different people. It's been in the news. And there's a number of reasons why I'll be voting in favor. While I realize this isn't specific to Enbridge, it is related to that particular project. And right now, when I look at that particular project, I don't believe that the City of Prince Rupert is really getting anything out of it. And I don't think that the risks outweigh the benefits. Or sorry, the other way around. I think the risks very much outweigh the benefits that are coming forward. I also believe that on a philosophical basis, I am of the opinion that we continue to export jobs to other countries. bitumen exports or crude oil exports that we're sending to other countries could be refined here in Canada, and we could be sending a value-added product out. And I don't think we should continue to export jobs. I also have problems which are related to other resolutions regarding our ability to clean up the spills. It's a difficult channel to navigate. I don't think that we have the ability to even get to those tankers if it was high seas, and to be able to actually do anything. And while there is evidence that there's economic benefits, the economic benefits that come from the project, at least with Enbridge, don't come to Prince Rupert. They go to the provincial and federal governments, and they decide how that money is being spent, and we get nothing, and yet we take all the risks. And there's a continual cutback on safety measures. So for all of those reasons, I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Giron.
I'll just make a comment. I appreciated Mr. Shannon's presentation this evening. I'll be voting for this as well, because common sense tells me, just my common sense in these waters, to navigate a very large crude carrier doesn't make sense to me. And with his presentation showing other places in the world where these tankers are going, logistically, sure, it's a shorter route to Asia, but to navigate in these waters it doesn't make any sense at all. So I'll be voting for this motion.
I think there's an appropriate time and place to vote on these matters, and I think solely taking into consideration this council as a governing body, that whether you're for something or whether you're against it, we are better off to wait until the whole review process is done. The estimated time for the whole review process is the end of 2013, and then I think once you've got all the information, I think that's, as a governing body, not as individuals, but as a governing body, once you've got all of the appropriate information, that is the appropriate time to then decide. There's no reason to rush in this process. The process is a documented one, and I think no matter whether it's this topic or another topic, you're always, as a governing body, better to wait till all the information is in and the review process is over. Councillor Carlick Pearson and then Councillor Rice.
I believe that in 1 year from now, I'm going to have the exact same. I know Councillor Rice is going to say something similar, but I understand. I'm going to have the same opinion about this project, in that I'm completely 100% opposed to it. And right now, next year, 5 years from now, I'm going to have the same opinion of this project. So, however it plays out with council.
Certainly. Councillor Rice.
I just wanted to reiterate, though, that the Joint Review Panel has explicitly solicited us for our opinion. So I don't feel that waiting until they've made up their mind is the time for them to hear our opinion. I feel like this is the time because they're actually asking for it. And if I could comment on waiting for the process, local governments make decisions on activities, projects, things going on in the world, well within and without of processes that are occurring. And if I could use the example, and I don't mean this in a nasty, condescending way, it's just the first example that came to my mind, and it happened before I was on council. The waterfront pellet plant proposal. The environmental assessment for that has not even commenced, and council voted in favor to support that project. So we do make decisions all the time within and without of the framework.
The council voted in support of the project to see it continue to the environmental review process. They did not give a carte blanche support for the project.
I think it was interpreted by many people within our community that we
Well, if people
this
can't be bothered to get the details and they want to interpret it any such way, none of us have any control over that. But the facts stand. Councillor Thorkelson and then Councillor Ashley.
I don't think I want to say that if the process wasn't a loaded process, I may very well agree with you. If what was going to happen was that the Joint Review Panel was going to weigh everything, weigh all the pros and all the cons, and look at everything and come up with a decision that was an unbiased, unpressured decision, then maybe I'd have to think about it. But I may agree with what you've suggested, that we wait and review all the information ourselves. But the Prime Minister of Canada has made and his minister in charge of natural resources have made statements that said this project is going ahead. So that, to me, has lifted it completely out of the biological and sociological and economic arguments, has completely made really the Joint Review Panel nothing but a dog with no teeth, or whatever other metaphor you want to use. And so I think that the only way we are going to stop this is by getting involved in politics. The government raised the ante when the Premier of British Columbia, the Premier of Alberta, and the Prime Minister of Canada said that this project were going to go ahead and that they were in favor of this project. Now, I don't know if that was Mr. Campbell or Christy Clark. I can't remember. I think it may have been Mr. Campbell. However, this government the provincial government has not said that they're opposed to that statement. And even further, in China, that statement was made a second time by the Prime Minister. Therefore, he has raised the ante of saying that it doesn't really matter what the JRP is going to come up with. That's the position that I feel that we are all in, and that's what we're all reacting to. And so so therefore I do believe it is incumbent upon us, if we believe strongly, not as individuals, but also as a city, that we need to respond to that. For all of the reasons that Councillor Ashley talked about, all of those reasons are the reasons that I think that we have to represent our community and say this is a bad deal for our community. JRP may have asked us our opinion, but I don't think that our opinion is going to influence them one way or other, and I don't know if our opinion is going to influence the federal government one way or another. However, I do feel that we should be one of the leading communities that say this is the risks outweigh the benefits to our community. We do not want to see it go ahead because the risks outweigh the benefits to our community. And if all of the other communities in British Columbia come to that position individually, come to that position, then the provincial and federal governments will have to tread more carefully. So that is the reason that I may have agreed with you had the provincial and federal governments kept their hands out of that process. But when somebody announces that it doesn't really matter, it's going ahead, it's a no-brainer, then to me it's no-brainer that we have to step into the process and roll our sleeves up and come out fighting as a political entity. And that's why, Your Worship, I've felt very strongly about this from the beginning, and I don't think anybody would have doubted where I stood at any time on this issue. And but I have not argued that we need to take a position on this issue until now. And the reason I argue now that the city needs to take a position is because the federal government has, the Prime Minister of Canada has basically, I'm trying to find my mother saying, don't use that word, has basically shat all over the process. and I think that we need to stand up and say, you can't do that. That is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I echo a lot, all of what Councillor Thorkelson said, and I certainly appreciate...
Including that particular word?
Yep, absolutely. I do appreciate your position. I can understand why you're looking at it and looking at the whole process. But I guess when I come at these kinds of decisions, I believe that, on council, we're expected to make decisions with an open mind. And when provided with new information, if new information comes down the line through the review process, there's a possibility that we could change our mind. Right now, I'm skeptical as to whether that could happen for me, but it's possible, right? So the mind is open to that type of thing. But it shouldn't, in my opinion, stop us from taking a position now. Because, especially with this particular resolution, it's not just about the Enbridge project. It's about our waters and protecting our community. It's about the dangers to our waters. It's about the inability to clean up any of these spills. We don't have the technology to do that. I think the average rate is something like 5%, if that they can actually clean up out of the water. I think that's a huge risk to be taking. The lack of liabilities for shippers. I mean, these big projects, they got all the money behind them until there's actual, big, huge risks to our community. I already talked about the exporting of jobs. All of those things don't change with the review process. Those things are still there. And so for me, I think we need to take a position to protect our communities, to ensure that all the concerns that have been said are known. And if somewhere down the line they come up with, and some scientist comes up with something that will, ensure that 99% of an oil spill can get cleaned up if a spill happens, then I might change my mind. But at this point, with everything that's out there, I can't see myself doing that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Garon.
Just one more comment, Your Worship, or maybe two or three. I agree with everything Councillor Ashley has said, and I did attend some of the Joint Review Panel hearings last week, and there were quite a few people who got up and spoke, and the more I listened, the more I learned, more than anything Enbridge has had to say. And there were some quite impassioned speeches up there, and one thing that always comes back to me was Mr. Naylor that got up and spoke about infrastructure, and after a while it breaks down. 10, 20 years, what's that pipeline really going to look like? And the other part of the equation, and we're always talking about Enbridge and the pipeline, but to me the most detrimental part is the super tankers coming in, and the day that there is a spill, and there will be a spill one day, do we want to be responsible for saying that, yes, you guys go ahead and do that, and to believe that there will be no spill, or it's a small risk, but there's always human error, and from Mr. Shannon's report, everything is a human error that happens. Some of them are mechanical, but most often than not, it's human error. So, we have a diverse, rich cultural community out here, and the other impacting statement was from Mr. Lee Brain at that meeting, and we do need to change the way we do things. So I'm stepping up to the plate, and I'm going to vote for this resolution.
Any further comments? Question's been called. Those in favor? Mr. Grodecki, that motion passes. Is there any further questions of staff, reports, inquiries? Councillor Rice.
I would like to make a motion that the resolution that just passed be submitted as written evidence in the Joint Review Panel, so that it is on the public record that we have taken this position. And you can do that up until August 31st of this year.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Anything further? If not, I'll give the Mayor's report. I attended the Prince Rupert and District Chamber of Commerce February meeting to hear Don Crissell, the CEO of the Prince Rupert Port Authority, speak about the development of the port and support of the community. Councillor Garon was also in attendance and participated in a Prince Rupert marina development meeting to talk about design work and a proposed marina development within harbor limits involving participation from various sectors of the marine community. And I attended the Government of Canada announcement by Minister Ed Fast, Minister of International Trade, regarding funding of the road, rail, and utility corridor for Ridley Island export facilities that would include the various activities serviced by rail out at Ridley Island. And Councillors Garon and Kinney were also in attendance. And the announcement participants involved the Government of Canada, Canadian National Railway, and the Prince Rupert Port Authority. And that concludes my report. There's nothing further for this meeting, Mr. Howie. I'll ask Council for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Kinney. Any discussion? Question has been called. Those in favor? Thank you. This council meeting stands adjourned.